Thanks for welcoming me back for a second year. I saw a lot of you down in Rockingham last year, and I was just at a conference last week in Northfield, so it's a lot of fun to speak with you folks. And yeah, I just want to let you know about a really cool opportunity to partner your reading programs with summer meals, and potentially to be in a position to not have to prepare those meals or to pay for them, but to be able to bring that into your program. So I'm going to, looking at the folks in Newport too, I'm going to provide as much information as I can in a short amount of time. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of everything because I would be happy to discuss the particularities of your community on the sides, because I know that every town is different, eligibility, lots of things can be very particular to the community that you work in. That's why I'm going to stay here for lunch. But I just want to show you in broad strokes how this program works, and I'd like to leave some time for your questions or for your experience as well. Which library do you work at?
This is Bennington Free.
Oh, Bennington Free. Okay, so you work with Maureen O'Neill then?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we'll just go through this very quickly, and then if we have questions, we can have those at the end. So the background is about hunger in Vermont, and I'll let you have a look at those numbers. One of the things that I think is important to note is, what is food insecurity? Does anyone know, can anyone try to take a stab at a definition of what food insecurity is? Yes?
Well, it's when you really don't have enough money to qualify for food assistance, but you don't have enough money really to buy enough healthy food for your family. And so week to week, you're just wondering, are you going to be able to do that?
Right, and so that's interesting. What she noted is that it's about the actual physical hunger. That can be a piece of food insecurity, but it is also the psychological, the anxiety around food. Maybe I actually ended up having enough this week, or maybe I have enough food kind of 3 weeks out of the month, but for one reason or another, there are points in the year or in the month or in the day where I don't know where my next meal is coming from, or I don't know if I'm going to have enough, or maybe I'll end up with enough, but I might not get the kinds of food that I would give for myself otherwise. We know that food insecurity is quite prevalent in Vermont. There's actually a higher percentage of Vermont children than Vermonters as a whole who are food insecure. And we know also, sometimes we don't think about this, there's a link between actually food insecurity or hunger and obesity, because obesity is sometimes it's having access to food, but not to the kinds of food that you would be able to afford for yourself if you had unlimited or at least adequate financial resources. As you know, it's a lot more expensive to get fresh food than it is to get junk food. And so if you're on a limited budget, those are some of the choices that you sometimes make. Summer meals are one of the tools to offset that. This is a federal program. It's not Hunger Free Vermont's program. We're doing outreach to let people know about it and how they can use it. But basically, you have the school lunch and the school breakfast programs during the school year. The summer food service program is an extension. It's a separate program that is meant to extend availability and the accessibility of meals when school is out. Because in the summertime, maybe a child or a family had their kids receiving meals at school for little to no cost, and then in the summertime that goes away, and families have to scramble to either provide those meals, A, to provide the meals, and then B, to pay for them, because it's a substantial increase in budgeting for meals that were potentially covered the rest of the year. So as you know, this is probably preaching to the choir with libraries, but outcomes associated with food insecurity can be lower grades, more anxiety and aggression. If you don't have breakfast in the morning, you're more likely to have a headache, you're more likely to have a stomach ache, you're more likely to have a nurse referral. These are the kinds of things that make it more difficult to learn. So in addition to the physical and the psychological aspects of hunger, it also has negative impacts on learning. And so as folks who are very interested in learning and in literacy, I think that it's very easy to understand the connection between adequate nutrition and readiness to learn and school performance. And so one of the ways that we really have marketed and we've talked about summer meals with folks in libraries is that we hope, our goal is that something like a summer meal program will strengthen the work that you're already doing with summer reading programs. We know that you want strong participation, we know that you want kids to come and to attend your programming, and our hope is that by providing meals, it's an added value to families, it's an added value to the kids that are participating, and hopefully it can increase participation and it can increase retention of the programs that you operate. What we find with meal programs, especially in a rural place like Vermont, is that it's really important to pair some kind of activity with a meal program, that really increases the numbers of kids that come, the numbers of kids that keep coming, and makes the programs more viable. And the goal here in reaching out to libraries is to try to make that connection as strong as possible. Not only does this help offset hunger, not only does it help offset, hopefully, childhood obesity, the goal in bringing kids to programs like yours is to help offset summer learning loss. Who has heard of the summer slide of summer learning loss? Yeah. It's up to 2/3 of the reading achievement gap by the time a child enters high school. And so although I work on the hunger side of things, once again, I don't see this as disconnected. I was with them at a meeting, was it yesterday? The days running together.
Yesterday.
A meeting yesterday with Sharon with Vermont After School, and she was talking about, there is this interest in making sure that there's readiness for children in their learning as they go throughout the school year. Libraries can have a piece in that throughout the year, and we feel like summer and the summer meal program in particular is a very strong connection. So once again, it's a federal child nutrition program. Depending on your community, there are different eligibility criteria, but in many communities across Vermont, you would be able to operate a meal program where all children 18 and under would be able to eat a reimbursable meal for free. You don't have to know anything. If you're in an eligible area, and once again, I encourage you to come talk with me about that, you don't have to know anything about that child. You don't have to know where they come from. You don't have to know anything about their financial situation. It's your location and information about that location that confers eligibility. So it's actually pretty straightforward. What you would do as a site is that you keep a head count of the number of kids that receive a meal. In other cases, it can be a little different, but there are different possibilities for operating sites in other areas. You can operate as a closed enrolled site where a specific group of kids can eat for free, or there's a third model where kids who are identified as free and reduced are able to receive free meals. So what I'd like to note, though, is that for many of you, you're in communities where this would be the case, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about that. One other thing I'd like to note is we're not necessarily asking libraries to become kitchens or cafeterias. Our goal is to, where possible, connect you to summer meal providers that are already doing this kind of work in and around your communities. Last year, there were about 60 sponsors. These are food service providers that prepared meals for service at over 270 meal sites last year. So this is something that is active in all 14 of Vermont's counties, in many, many communities throughout the state. Nevertheless, that doesn't mean that everyone has ready access to a meal. And once again, folks that are participating in your programs, where it makes sense, we'd really like to connect you to those summer meal sites. In many cases, that might mean it makes sense for you to become a site. In some cases, it may mean letting you know where a site's located nearby so that kids can be directed and families can be directed to sites. For example, we were at the meeting in Northfield last week. There's a library in Essex. As it turns out, there's a summer meal site just across the road. And so she said, well, you know what, I think I'm just going to, we're just going to walk kids over, or we're going to we're going to let parents know about this, and we maybe can arrange our programming so that it fits in very well with the meal program that's already in place. So there are a couple different approaches here, and my goal is not necessarily that everyone has to become a meal site, but that you think about what's the connection that can be made in my community, what resources are already available, and what role can the library play? How can this be a part of what you're already doing? And if you have any questions, I'm remembering to look at the camera here. If you have any questions, I want you to let me know. Once again, this is a benefit for kids and for families. It allows families to provide, by going to the library, you're able to provide one extra resource. You're able to provide that education, that literacy, and then also that nutrition piece. This is a great benefit, financial benefit for families, and then also just a benefit for them to know that their kids have access to these resources when school is out. As we know, access to both learning and nutrition isn't always equal for everyone. And so this is a way to make sure that we're trying to level the playing field and make sure kids have the resources they need when school is out. I think I've already mentioned that. Last year, I only saw the one hand I saw from Bennington that you ran the summer meal site last year. We actually saw a big increase in summer meal sites at libraries last year. There were 18 open sites, so that's where I was mentioning that everyone could eat 18 and under and receive and meals would be reimbursed. There were 7 in 2013, so we added 11 library sites. There were 24 total. That's the open sites that I mentioned and the closed enrolled, so that proves that there can be different models under which this program operates successfully. And I know there are lots of other public libraries in Vermont. I'm not saying that everyone can or should do it. That's not my point. My point is that I think there may be some room for growth. I'm really excited to continue this partnership and to deepen it. We've seen libraries that have been able to really successfully implement this. There can be challenges along the way. That's a lot of what we do, is to try to work with folks if there are any logistical issues or if participation isn't what you think it should be. And that's why I would like to continue to work with you today. At lunch, feel free to come and see me. Also, I set up some materials just in the main reading room. So we have posters. So for summer meal sites that are going to operate this year, we have posters that you can pick up to put out in your library and around the community. We have further information about summer meal programs. And also just an added thing, I brought some 3 Squares Vermont, so food stamp rack cards and business cards. If you would like to put any of those near your computers where you operate in your communities, that's helpful too. It just directs people to where they might be able to access support to receive 3 Squares Vermont benefits as well. So I hope you'll come and see me. I want to just kind of leave up some of these next steps. You can connect with me to locate a local summer food sponsor. We'll put you in touch directly to develop a game plan to integrate your program with meals. And then hopefully we'll make sure that everyone knows about it, because if people don't know about a program, they can't participate in it. Outreach is a big part, which is why I brought some of those materials, and I would be happy to continue working with any of you.